Driswan.
Driswan.
Oh, yeah. Tangani de Leswan. Shumden Deji. Shumden Deji. Desha Tiwa Kagbe Shirdo, Kansagi Keber. Keber la Changbe Yonde Chungni. Nang la Asigwa. Shidan Chen Laya. Shidan Chen Namla. Shidan Gewa Kagbe Shido. Sayadan Chuguso. Danum Banawe. Nyumun Jumbe. Shagyabanam Kona. Kadub Chen Shicha Osungwa. No, Shumden Dege, Nia Kansa Ringashilia, Kelon Patosulva. Any Kansa Ringashilia, any Nelu Longulia, Shembakaya, Tundalia, Changbe Yonde Chungni to Sun Yore, Sera. Oh, Yenaya, Tende, Medunge, Tendelia, Kalechuna, Namsa Kondo Sacho Tendena, Shedan Janamla, Shedan Jawa Kagbechedo, Sadan Chugula Soba, Nelu Longula Soba, Yabo, Lea De Choba. Na yore sigora. O de sonja ko Nyumun Jombe Shagyaba Nam Kona Kadupchen Rese. Sobolia Kaletenge de Chugitunda Kale Kadupchen Sigma Rese. Nyumun Jomba Shinge Otezulia Kadupchen Sigore Suda.
So we're at the bottom of page 151 where we're continuing about the ascetic practices, and the supermundane Victor gave certain individuals 12 rules of training to prevent desire. This was for bhikshus. He gave certain rules that for helping them to deal with their attachment to their place, their body, and their resources. And then there were those then who couldn't stay like that. So then, to prevent anger, he gave the angry fine food, clothing, and so forth. Therefore, only the Shakyas who conquered disturbing emotions should be called ascetics. This means those who are following the Dharma with undergoing difficulties, ascetic practices are really are able to conquer their disturbing emotions, rather than those who are what do you say, mortifying their bodies.
Changbe Yonde Chungni Sigdwa. Changbe Yonde Chungni said, Ko Zula Khan Shedwa, Zula Khan, Shinshan Doya Sheduda. And then Nemel Sigdwa, Tessan, Tand and Yeshe, Tezulia, Shenjaka and the Serwa. And the Kase Sahelia, Shenjaka and the Ser.
Oh, Sega.
Sahelia, Shenjaka, Bechedu. Oh, the date in the Nash, the Karsore. Oh, Chug, Tulo, Tozulia. Shenjaka, Bechet Sungiora. Oh, Diche do Tambo, Zula Khan, Shenjaka, Bechedu, Neme, Kumbaba Sigdwa. Kelokashe, the Kelopadu, Kumba. Ne Embutender, Mimambu Massa, Tende, Kumbaba Sigdwa. Tindel, now Nangiora. Nel Mate, Kumba. Shingdumbas. Kashe Shingitil, the Amado, Kambana Medingit in the Yora. Shingioliate, Sing the Kambana Shiche, Tendiche, Kumba Shingdumbatas. Laga Mebasan, Kashe, Kambadena, Tom get in the Nal. Cover of course, and get in the Reluchu Saxorit in the night, get in Kumba Shingdumbata. Laga Mess or Zula Khan Shinjaka Bechedu Tindesungwa. Kashe, Totrele, take your Totru Shingra. Oh, yes, Tindel Te, Comita, what I had to do. Tindel Te, Tinde Calatres, and the side, and get in the Yora. Till she Ungudwa. Kumbaba, Shindrumba, Laga Meva, Totribasche. Zula Khan Shinjaka Bechedu Tindel Te, now I have it in the Yora. Teaching letter.
So then those who. We're gonna count these 12. So then they have to do with helping those who have, what do you say, attachment for certain things, to control their attachment, and those things are like the place they're going to stay. It means really the temple, like is a literal translation. It's probably more like the monastic compound or something. Then there's to their attachment to their clothes, to food, and I think the other one is the utilities inside. I'm not quite sure. I forgot that one, but anyway, we'll get to it. So there's 4 to do with the place they're staying with, which would be, let's just use the word temple. So he would tell them they'd live in isolation in the forest, something like that, and then others would like stay under a tree. Others would have like this little, for lack of a better word, corral. It's just like a goat would stay in. So to stay in that little area, and then the 4th one.
Graveyard.
Oh, graveyard. Good. Yes, thank you. Graveyard. It would be staying in a graveyard.
This one. Oh, tene ako ne me nyeje da tenda tende ko le shemba ka be sidurwa. Mel sidurwa nyeje da tenda tende le shemba ka sidurwa.
Sort of.
Ne tsogbu ba da shi chi shimba ni shara. Tsogbu ba sidza kono desa tushira chi so ne tele te ni ko de ta ga ni nye ma do ngazune shi nyeje che rimbuchi nyegyo mara. Tsogbuba sigora.
Tsogbuba.
Nema ladal chindu semba kelun kishi ko tsogbuba chigdwa.
Oh, dear.
E korante asa tende shingi chiyor tinal kaduna tina de nyedio tinal samlutan ani nikusun niku pas kar kuna kura. Tsogbuba sigdwa. Shi chishimba se de karana taga de mado di ya dasha di du dasha sigmarwa. Shi chishimba niyora.
Oh, shi chishimba.
Shi chishimba.
No.
Kare rasuna desa kande rasuna daga ran dibare mado tindri mendo ya dasha du dasha ke sigi maro kare rana te ran la dasha de na di dig mendo tindre ke che yo mare koran zu kare che dasra te che shi chi shimba sa
so then
ni dire mella shinje ka bichido na da mella
I think this one is just talking about the place, and it's like where you would rest too or sleep. One instruction was to stay in like I think it's like a box really, and you're sleeping sitting up in a box, and then it's just like a square area that you're limiting yourself to. And the second one is just you're satisfied wherever you set down. It's sort of like you say, oh, I don't like this place. Or you don't have any choice. You just, wherever you happen to be, you sleep there. Or sit there. Sleep. Nikuya down the gods deya, right?
No, Niku Nazuna Shimanye, Jumbuche, and the Deg Marwa. Or Daradus Nye condition at our day.
Nika la dende de be. Nika la dende de be.
Niga Malichi, the Carrana Sura.
Oh, got it.
What about Marco? They said the Carrana till the Yanni Mara. So get Mara.
So the first one is that you're not. You aren't lying down. You can't. It's not a long place where you can just lie down.
That's Celia, Kala Sayadelia, Shinjaka Bechu Sura. Energy, Sonyo Basi, Missal Done. Kare rana koti saya de siora. Sonyo bata sido. Sonyo bata. Tenjik se yang chik tangbu de ne kala chik kare ne chikle timado ya lan sani yang saya tinde yo marwa. Ko chikan de se chikan de kala se ka sene sa kaze te ne ti sa ne dibu chesira. Chi melembas. Sonyo bata tenjik se. Tenjik kan de che. Ne sa mado ya lan sani yang saya yo marwa. 7 million basidizan tangbu kazel le sagi na tege sa on dik so slab te chele yangja sa me chi yora ko Chimele, Chema Yang Melembare, Tambu Gazalena, Desire Chudele, Tijel Yang Dimasus Yang Lay, to the Chigmaro, Chimelemba, Tisum, this Salish and
So then, to reduce attachment to food, then there's 3 different ones. One is where you are receiving your food by alms, and then the second one is that you don't leave your place where you're staying in order to get food, and then the third one is that you don't get another helping.
This one. Oh yeah. Then I got that sugar derva. Sugar le shimba kabechidura. Dulo dozulia. Sugar sumba sera. Sugar sumba sera. Sugar da tango da lagu da namjar sumyora. Mel koyachi tel koyachi ne chushida chidu namjar sumyora. O dimado chala mangbo ni sumtin menyang telia. Sugar sumba wasigdoa. Chida sugar sumda. Chakta chusi chiyang mizu yushabe. Mizu payme donge tozo ya lene soy tiamne kyab tekon mado shenda saba megonge chiora chakda chobase mizu kenyin le yusha sama ene su chuje chetozo kyabge ne kyabje tekon de chora le chakda chobase do ko chakda chobase do chogo somda chingba base lore chingba sene tuloji pidabuda tinde magombe che tabja tinde 마도 약보든데 매고 배틀 칭바 봤어도 그 토부라든데 대등산데 시트부도 인제부 근데 매버들 쓰기도 어디 숨디 그걸 신자 방배치도 숨으라 최고 숨바 봐세 아니 칭바 봐세 아니 가스레 착답 줘 봐서
So then there's 3 then to do with limiting or controlling your attachment to clothing, where you'd limit yourself to one set of the 3 types of religious robe. There's one to cover your upper body, well, your trunk, the trunk of your body, one to cover the lower body, and then a shawl that you use for any kind of religious practice, something like that. Then there's the limiting yourself to what would you call it? That just sort of like used clothing, and you can. It's okay if you wouldn't buy anything new, and you'd take those, and you could dye it. But then you create your religious robes out of those. Then the third one then is kind of like not very good cloth. You're not like nowadays we have thin cloth, and it's sort of like thick and not very good cloth, and you're making your religious robes out of that.
This one. Dili changbe yende chungni serwa. Ta kansa ge longpa kansa ge ring gashilia. Ko shenja panya chido ko de tugu ne yan tinnawa yora. Ode kanga dinde te ko mari yan be de kondu sabre dinde ne kale chungsu kondu sagra. Desa ya bu mendo kantang ge do tene shingole desa mu do kangba mendo chi cha je dinde nyokde yone sambe Menge in now your mare. Till there mare se Kangbada Karina Tessa, Yabunal Den degrees on Gora. Cares and Deco, the Guna Deneco, Condusene, Numama Pegiora. Chibadeco there to be or Numupa, Shinja Merge Tichiora. Tendicity. Mango Mangazulemdo de Kishichik Desa. Shindrumba is a question nothing land or colors, and Shenda de Mado, Kangbana Medenge Chunso, Cascaldo de Geshe. The Kangal Marishanda, the Kanga Chego Mare. What in the Tumgene, Kisan Yoba, Chashin Chundrum to Yeva today in the Dagora. I uncle, the man there took manner, and the Kalima was no contrasagritis and any Namoya Pay Kundura. And the Jim Jitangumares.
So certainly not everybody had to stay in any of these ways. if it would make you very irritable and ready to get angry, then it would increase your affliction. So that wouldn't be at all helpful. So you were given a good, if you say, oh, I can't stay under this tree with the snow, and then you get all upset and angry. Then very counterproductive. So then you were given a place inside, and you could lie down and so forth. But so it was certainly not for everybody, and certainly the consideration was not to let the person have to deal with a lot of anger and annoyance and so forth. So then when we went to Mungud, in the earlier time, there was one person who undertook kind of this one where he was wandering. He never stayed inside, and he was always wandering around in the. That time there were a lot of woods, so he's you could call it a jungle if you want, but in the woods, and then getting sort of food where he could and like that, and he was thinking that this will increase his. It was a practice for him to decrease his attachment and to increase his virtue, and but certainly that's not for everyone. And then when they stayed in this way, for instance, following the 12 rules of training to prevent desire, then in those circumstances they could cultivate loving kindness and so forth. Then so also when the others who couldn't stay in that and were staying in a circumstance so that they wouldn't be irritable and angry, then with good food and clothing and so forth, then those people had to counteract their attachment, thinking about impermanence, and also their pride. For instance, when there's a custom of sitting on a higher seat when you're teaching the Dharma, so then the custom then to counteract your pride and that pride and attachment in that circumstance is to bow. You bow to the seat, and then you. When you get up to sit down on the seat, you go through the I think what are they called? The 9 similes. The 9 similes of for impermanence as you're sitting down, and then you snap your finger like that to remind you of impermanence.
Puram so Toba Shinose, Nyomo Sirven didn't shimmer Davanazo Toba Jurose, Purshim Yora, Puram Gishingde. Oh, this Sirsonane Quat, Teletan and Ramandangar Motan Shinida, Puram that in the Mambosoya Yore, in Biakutungi of Yora. Oh, the Nation Yomolias of the Tiana Cotsini, Pakani Cheviana, and the Teletene, Dava Shima Pusum Soba, Yundemambuki and Gurva, or Teliata, Kadushans Yores. Nyomo Sirven didn't shimmer Davanazo Toba Juros.
Well, so the example is of here one gets sugar and so forth by crushing sugar cane. Sugar cane, when you crush it, then you can get out sugar and different kinds of syrup. Trying to make what's the one that doesn't go uphill? Molasses. Yeah. And then you get like what is it? There's some kind of like a cane sugar kind of thing, like almost like a candy. These kinds of things can come out of crushing sugar, and all kinds of enjoyable things is what the idea is, so that when you crush, then it says all kinds of happiness in this life and in the future are gained by crushing the disturbing emotions. So when you crush or what do you say, overcome or reduce or your disturbing emotions, your afflictions, then you get all kinds of you'll be happy in this life and your future life, and you get a kind of a special kind of happiness and in the future life, and also you're able to generate a lot of virtues as well, and I forgot just Geshe was reading that. So it's only the Shakyas who conquered their afflictions that should be called ascetics, because they're overcoming their afflictions and their mental afflictions.
Oh yeah, Tandi Nibatirida. Tambude Shesaswa, Lucire, and the Kaduki letter, Kinyamopon a tab reset Pakaswa. Yamopon a tab shepherd Sigura, and a tab Yamopon a tab caressana, the tab shake doa. Even Yamopon a tab shepherdini, Yamongu upon Zuda, Sabin Tune, Pon and Nibunis, and Yamongura, Nega Pa, Mabasway Chida, Savan and Mabasway tab near your.
Okay, so then. Now, if you can, and look at the outline, the topic is shifting to explaining the means to abandon afflictions, and the way, and that's divided into the way to abandon manifest afflictions, and the way and how to cultivate the antidote which totally destroys the seeds of the afflictions.
This one.
Right, this one.
Oh, Tambutan, you mong you up on the letters and the sum shake doa. And then there's a shetan timusum tosum ponzu, chitan ponzu share. And then you move on contriponzu country and the shop on the country, timuponzu country, social share. And then Troja ponzu, conjuda, and the shop on the lay chitrado yanga, share, sum shake doa.
So then, the way to abandon the manifest afflictions is a general explanation of how to abandon the three poisons. That means attachment, hostility, and ignorance. And then an individual explanation of each of those afflictions. And then the third one is finally a detailed explanation of how to abandon both hostility and attachment, or anger and desire, if you prefer.
peji kuraman denshan hakondura to sum chile shebarcha tambo dosha kondunga jegi lega kare ko kare yongore chile desgora ane to sum pangobe juse ante pangoya kare mabana kare pangoya juse kare che ane troja je nyemboso ane kondro nyembo kare dosha nyembo kare se sosor nyembo tenju che ro ane troja jengi lomade ane kondro jengi kansa da dosha lakbar che kansa do kantre che ko loma de chushen kantre tul kore sigora ane nyomo boya tujirimba shene ponso nyomo to ko tuzu liya nyomo de ma ke de kable ti ma ti tinde pangure she ju nga yong do
So again, it's good for you to hear this, how we're going to be proceeding here. That when we're talking about abandoning the, how to maybe eliminate the three poisons, then you understand the three poisons then are attachment, hostility, and ignorance. And when we, so we have to understand the functions. The functions of the three poisons, then the reason for the second part would then be, the next stanza would then be about the reason for the need to eliminate the three poisons, and then the next stanza is antidotes to anger and, or anger and desire or hostility and attachment must be applied individually. And then how to treat students or persons who have attachment and hostility, desire and anger, and then how to apply the antidotes on understanding the sequence in which these disturbing emotions arise, or these afflictions.
Da tuksum yechele lega de soso sheba chene ne panku grese ti shegdo dosha chele karesne dosha ne dubatese ko chakbe yudu zu yongya cheje mabusu ruru se te ku se ya dubatse yora ane choyele ne cheba de kondro chele karesne ane kondro la sa no shendal cheba che jagde jab ti che de re de yora jonga ko la longshin do se timude rangune chuba zimbala so mishibe timude karesne ti kangal yongro kondro danga jedan chado de kangalia roba chenge lungna shia de chenge de res gora junga gula lungshin do se junga gula lungshin do timu lene sonde so timu de te kangaya kene roba chigore pelchigore lungna shin cheya odi la den
So then if we understand how they function, we can get rid of them, these afflictions and or disturbing emotions. So the verse then details those. It says, desires activity is acquisition, anger's activity is conflict, as wind is to all the elements, confusion's activity is nurture. So here, attachment or craving, you can see these words have, craving seems probably appropriate in this context. Craving's activity is acquisition, so you're always trying to get things. Then anger's activity is conflict, or hostility's activity is conflict, where you're always stirring up things and causing trouble in between, in between people. Then, as wind is to all the elements, confusion's activity is to nurture. It's just wind is nurturing to all the other elements, and so in that same way, confusion or ignorance is its activity is to what do you say, increase all the other afflictions.
Dan deba de ma log yuda on de cha ge chele ne ta tan de sheba na shere de cha ge chele ne simjen membe ngobo tuba chakbe yu simjen da simjen mai be chala ro kare ne tisu tuber chi yora Te nyembula kare komgures na ne miduba komgures. Miduba komgures. Ane kordan longe pon ase ne kor mangbuti ku tega so longe mangbuti ku setezo mugo chede. Chokshiba chede resgora. Troyele ne tabji tsoba dese shenda da tsoba che kondu tire. Te nyembu kare shenda le chamba komgures soba komgures gora. Chamba kombada. Yida tumbe tsula kanla soba longe ba os. Ene che kondu da tinde sabi ne che tamande chunde ne ko yi so yida tumbe te asa da kala to kanga tanti botinde longe gure sera. Mela soba juwa ko la lungi tobje ba shindo timu ge lene chagdani ge swende sosa. Mela soba juwa de lo lung de ko jebar chigore tinashi timu meshibe mombade kondu da de cha kanga ya swende ya 대중계를 들여서 요라. 대년부 가르 공부에서는 대문년부 땡진 대바를 좀 공내 메다바다 동해와다 담해바다 동반이 뜻을 공부를 했어요.
So then the commentary goes into detail here. Desires activity or cravings activity is to acquire both animate and inanimate, both the animate and inanimate means sentient beings and things. Its antidote is to meditate on repulsiveness or unattractiveness and to give up one's circle of friends and one's possessions. Here, giving up means to really reduce and then be content with a certain amount of friends and possessions. Then anger's activity is strife and conflict, as mentioned in the stanza. And then so then the antidote to this is cultivating love, and literally it says here, using houses and so forth that one likes for its antidote, are its antidote, sorry. So the idea there is, as we're talking, this using houses means, I was trying to look for a good word before the word was temple, and I guess it's just wherever you're staying, using your domicile and so forth that one likes are its antidote, and the idea is it's just a place that you're comfortable in. So then that would reduce your anger or hostility, and then. Just as wind increases the strength of fire and the other elements, that's the function of wind. Confusion's activity is to nurture or increase both desire and anger and the other afflictions. Its antidote is meditation on dependent arising and so forth. So forth we could understand like impermanence, suffering, and selflessness and so forth. Well,
oh yeah, that better da. Penasi yordo, deja da kondo to nyembu so tengures sonswa. Oh, de gares pena ne chui simbu me so bashino se doa. Chui simbu se chui la nengenge ko simbu yorwa. Oh, de simbu chuambra tatine tati tumsha mini yombra nyasim ge nyava ni yora. Yasimge nyabani yora. Ene chu simbude o kuni lepska nasa ko mi dondo je mil tsuche minna shinche dora. Endo kini karche ge basede ngani ene nyasimge yin khala tendal nyasimge yombe sera. O ene nge rogba chige yin se. Ene kerani chige me para ase. Chige ene karere o tsu asya nya shatu ya tsu ase. Ene ngage nya du yons sera. Ko nya ke yons sera. Sa ko Chu Simbudi Lega Kara Nyadu Rurusa Kiwa Derva. O Denichi de Garsna Lungi Mishiba Mob the Lungi Maya Paria de Rediora. O Chi de Sodeco Garsa de Soya de Kala Soya de Rediora. O Dinashin de Jashida Timusungi, Leso Cheveres, Consum Soso Lechevanashi, the Zugatin Soso Cheres. O Tenete Nyambo Tenda de Lendoja Condungaji, Nyambo Soso Kaga Sonswa. O de chui simbu tozo ko shenda ga nugu mare met jabne ne ko mel shigu yambar ko di tanya na shin che ko simbu tie tozo lu nyebur chi yo angira ne ko mel shida shi urje me ko nugu yore ne ba che gore es san de ja kondo nga je so so nyembu kaga yores o di kare ni shegdo
So then if we take a look at the example here, it's like killing a sea monster with fire is what it literally says, but there's two examples of what you do with a sea monster here. And the first one would be about two fishermen coming to this area where this sea monster is swimming around, and the sea monster says, "Oh, what are these guys up to?" And so he manifested himself as a human, and then he asked them who they were and what they're up to, they told him they were fishermen and they'd come to fish. He said, "Oh, okay, one of you make the fire, and the other one can do the cooking, and I'll provide the fish. And that way we'll get a good meal without any bother." They agreed, and each did his work enthusiastically. So just as the sea monsters was to catch fish, Desire's activity is to acquire things. One man's task was to cook, and similarly anger creates conflict. When there's conflict, and unpleasantness makes others boil. And just as the third person's task was to stoke the fire, confusion's function is to feed desire and anger. So we have the other part to this is, well, applying antidotes or countermeasures to these three poisons. And so a sea monster apparently can't be intimidated by any other thing except to because its flesh is so sensitive to touch fire to its flesh. So similarly, all of these three poisons can't be stopped by. Well, I didn't read this. So
o di na shi tan de petition do nga zon de ja control kar congress medu ba da tende kongyara control ya ne ko karsra chamba komeda me timulu ya tene meda tunge to ta me ko so nyembo kaga yo.
So then there's what that means is that there's an individual antidote for each of the three poisons. For instance, what do we call it? Craving, then is by contemplating unattractiveness or repulsiveness, and then anger or hatred really its antidote is loving kindness or love, and then confusion or ignorance, its antidote is wisdom.
What this one? Oh, da niba to sum pongo be ju sen de shek do. Ne mi shi be mong ba. Ra mi da pa la ta ban zin ba ta mi ta yo mi sang zang zin ba la so ba. Te so lo mong ba su ra, mong ba se ti ra. Chin ji lo dun zin ba te lo mong ba se ge ba tan da. Za mi shi be mong ba da. Ani te la te ne ke ben de sha da kon do zo pan go ya ton da ka re se. Kondu da chakshin dozu yone digra takban zimba da tadun zimba da zangwan zimba da yone digra pangu ya chusen ka resti shegora odi pangu grese ka resi tezu da tunge jigi yore cheza pangu res gora tusum pangu be chusen ne tusum jenyembo yoja chichir pangja yin shena se tusum meba soya da yojir de meba so goya ge nyembo yona ya so meba so goya ke karje meba so gore sigora jo ta tele ba te so tunge ji gore mele phenge yo mar ne gore te so da bangure sigdo ma che ba len de sha ne tunge sigdo o tunge chakbe yu de mara ba che kale jeb de da che ne ko tunge ji chik chik do asera o ne kondo de kondo sa ane so kondo mi ji ba so mele ne ne ba che ko sana ne ba che ma tu 아니 소소로 뽕메 파조들이야 내가 깨고서 내가 깨마도 동해 지기 알아서라 뽕메래 초도 색도 초하게 동해 지기 그래서 용메실에 때문에서 아니 내주 용소 메시 발았잖아 네 때문에 용거 알아 메다바 마시 동해 마시 동반이 마시 친지로지 삼로다 아니 현대도 가게 지기 알아 때문에 대다 메토스 진짜 삼베게 아니 가르소래 그것도 용기가 레스거든. 동해제베 시로스 제반님도 로션 고고도 아니야. 동해제베 시로스 뽕고야 가르서 동해제가 레스야라. 동해 간데 지거서 태양은 번데베 유다 마체 발란 되샤네 동해. 되샤도 땅아 대고 되사네 대타만딘 대tun달 칼레제 동해제 심대시 용거라. 톰된 좀베 뽕메 발레 초야 동해제 콘도산이 신다 내가 깨고 산내가 깨마도 되지되네 고래 심대 용거라. tene ten shimo yonso meshe bala timuge nezu mashenza ane ko kanga kyon kanga de yongi wara ten samo yonso meshe bala timuge ane tungen jemba te chaso deda sigi nemba na tungen deda medo bane chere tungyawa yimbe nyomo ba nyomo pongala tsambar chawa so da te sonza tezu kanga tungen chigi wara tungen chigi yosa ane meshe be mongba ta tungen ki kyu meshe be mongba ti 뽕야 탑시셔 아니 콘도 뽕야 너자 뽕야 탑시셔 뽕고레스 가래서 소소 동해지기도 와서 감각 뭐다 디마데셔네 자와데 니가 마님도 님도 럽셔네
So we'll go through the next section which is reason for the need to eliminate the three poisons. We'll go through both the stanza and the commentary here. Though there are antidotes to the three poisons, why should one get rid of them? The questioner is thinking of, well, okay, there are antidotes, and especially here to it's really pointing out confusion or ignorance, that there is an antidote to that, and so the person is saying, well, why should I be getting rid of my grasping at a self, or my self-grasping and the attitudes of egotism and so forth. And the reason is because they produce suffering. So the verse then goes into explaining how they produce suffering. It says, craving is painful because of not getting. Anger is painful through lack of might. Anger is painful through lack of might, and confusion through not understanding. Because of this, these are not recognized. So you can understand this through taking a look at the commentary, where it says, craving produces suffering when one does not encounter what one badly wants. If you're always trying to get it and you can't get whatever you want, then it just it brings you a lot of suffering. And then anger produces suffering when one lacks might to crush the strong. If you're angry and you just want to overcome the other person, but you always have to be like suffering defeat, and so you're just always worried about how can I, get back at that person, and so it causes you a lot of suffering. Then confusion induces suffering when one fails to understand a subtle matter thoroughly. Here, confusion causes suffering really because it's it's at the base of all of the afflictions, and so any of the afflictions are fed by this really ignorance, so and so then it says the inability to recognize these forms of suffering, this kind of ignorance, then is, when one is overwhelmed by desire and so forth, is great suffering indeed. Therefore, persevere in getting rid of the afflictions. Wow.
뭐야? 다들 빼더라. 빼대고 빼나 의비부 매 껴보시게 보시게. 근데 그 개보다 지 추부된데 개별 전문가 같은데 배 단도년에 배매 단도년에. 아니 그 개별 전문인데 그 중개망 부여래. 어디든 잡아셔서라고 말와티 메두자 코테네. 코텐데 송깁치고 가르섬 콘도 사트네 개체마도 아니 메기베 제통에 지요래서라.
And so the example is of somebody who has all three. It really meant a certain poor man wanted a queen, but the kings keep their queens heavily guarded, and because he couldn't get to her, his craving made him suffer. He's just like, I always wanted the queen, but he couldn't possibly get through, and he felt anger towards the king for guarding his queens, and so he was always just, how can I overcome this? And so he suffered greatly according to through his desire and his anger.
도송기 님부서 소스 된주디 시에도와 티모 차단이 데르도 와서 somba 초자기 님부 소소를 템버차와네서와 초자스도 컨트다 되샤니스고라 티모 차단 니 트바신도 데 트바 요담 시나서 아니 차바제사가 요다 컨트제사가 유니데 베카가르바 자 티모 차단이 트바신도 티모다 컨트 ngajedozo nyamdosal timudi kontrokewale robachigre mishibe samlutegin dechakewale robachigora odi timudi niga de nyamdo tegido atungido tebashindo ene dechada kontro nibude nyamdo teba yorbesana odi ungmaresigora chagmajesa yude ko yido wa tongora kontrokesa yude yido mewa tongora ko nyamdo rechewa marwa chenase chidar bagen la tribada bagen da tribani de nyamdo yung me sardo tenji treba meton ase tishi cholan de cha da se kondolan de cha da lenji treba mebar tonso choje sa da tene chabaje sa yuni de nyamdo yung mare sgora de ped woden treba den do chidar bagen la triba se ro tenji treba mebar ton ate shindo se ene kondolan de cha da 규칙라 간사칙이야 컨트롤에 엔데샤게 니가 연구 말해서 유칙을 쓰여라 규칙을서 유칙을 쓰거라 근데 규칙도 잡아 매버 통돼서 내바다 겹기 초배 남바진배 니부 소소 된 거서 내차데 코튼 데고가 이동하던 날 고기 섬고야라 컨트롤에 어디 야보 맨도 섬고 겹기 초배로 완전 님도 중요해요 말와 어디 주세요 님도 섬
This next section is talking about 129. No, so I think I read the wrong one the last time. Sorry, but this the previous one was reason for the need to eliminate the three poisons, and this one is antidotes to anger and desire must be applied individually. So here. Just when anger and desire occur together, the question is, do anger and desire occur together the way confusion occurs with both of them? The idea is that confusion or ignorance is at the root of both of these, and so then can anger and desire like come together and just at one thing, simultaneously getting angry at one thing. So then, and angry and desirous for the same thing. And then, of course, this can't happen because the one sees things in an attractive light, like desire or craving, and then anger sees things in an unattractive light, and what do you say? Wants to get rid of them, and so then the verse says, just as it is seen that bile does not occur with phlegm, one sees that desire too does not occur with anger. So just as it's seen that bile and phlegm do not occur together, these are certain ways of the basis of certain of illness, and so then these cannot be occurring together. Then one sees that desire and anger too do not occur simultaneously in manifest form in one mental continuum. So the idea is that they're not both taking the same object and occurring simultaneously in a person's mind at that time. So since one has the aspect of craving, seeing the thing is very attractive and really wanting it, and the other has an aspect of aversion or repulsion, the different words are tried for this, and aversion and repulsion, and then seeing the thing as unattractive and turning away. So the two must be treated individually.
다 빼들어. 빼대고 미지 lumbu치게. 당에 배 메다 슈니 냠도살 tumbe치기 이제 추루사 본바티난데 추여스잖아. 메주가나 시리샤라는 고 메다 냠도 튼지 되게 말와. 빼들어.
So the example illustrates it well. A fool thought that he could mix fire and water, and so he dropped some fire into a water pot. And so that here's the idea. That's the idea. They can't exist together.
그래서 다시바 토자 공주 잡으되다 뇌샤전도서 로마도서 컨트레스에다 최신의 땡고레스 티셰도아 예시바들와 아니데 땅마들 sabject들은가 요바 독성병주 찌르때마들은가 요바 나네 시바들아
So now we're in the fourth of the five topics under a general explanation of how to abandon the three poisons, and the fourth one here is how to treat students how to treat students or persons who have attachment and hostility or desire and anger. Well,
어디 로마데 로변 되게네 수고 준비 그 군인이부터 가르쳐다 로마 최배 로변게 착당게 생이다 질레시 버잖아 로마를 야한테 선바트에 된다 최신게 되게 네 콘트사비에네 디질레 가르 콘트교 가르 연구하래 라 도샤신 분이 디교 가르 연구래 디맵스 탭시가래 디야보지 셰버잖아 아니 대줄에 랍시잖아 그 규디 쪼고래서 와라 소주 자고래서 와라 미들 삼로를 교래당고래서 와라 어디 건데 당고래서는 도샤 텐시 거 잘 돼서 아니 착바 친구 강가를 빼디 국국은 내가 잡았던 데에나 근데 그 내가 망보 그제 쳐다 텐데 돌로롭션 쳐다 텐데 돌 내가 망보 그제 그 고신달 코르주 그래서 와라 도샤 텐시 거 쳐대서 요부터 좀 내가 망보 그는 코백티 내가 마사라 되고도 상한된 야라나 베데고도 마데쇼고도 치치치 파도 쳐도 되고도 어딘데 대셔서 아니 그 삼로 망보 신자 망보 대서 삼로 코르 말했어 야 간지 메판 때문에 가래서 그 이동 다시 삼로단에 오던데 삼로 망보다 아니고 신자진 되샤게 온 거라 어디 맨디티레서 거기 매서 맨디 톨라 저신도 된서 콘도 사보데 그 야보제 소보제 그 pombo 신제 콜케바자 대야보도 결혼디 간가 야보도세 근데제 콜레야네 최신의 꿀꿀에서 거라 고야 야보네 신제야 야보 소그래서 거라 지만드는 그 콘도 사오제네 그 육쇼서 자리 좀 줘셔 대가서 톨라 저신 따데서 대 매 방방이지로 그 매대 콘도 사와들라 샘 가보지 대주에 되는 그 매들에서 거라 이라 방바 야군도 선 가보지 그 콘도 사고 말아 가보 맞은 그 남자 콘도 사지 되시거라 되는 건 제바데 냠도 로샤나 로마 되샤제 참 텐션도 그 하차데스거다 요분내시거라 강게시나 매봉신 수와 매바 착바 대 매인베시로세 고베 차에 매바 내가 산다는 거 거치고 그래서거라 초아진라 저신도 따데 방신 림도 제베서 그 이동부 그 가보 제주에는 거리야 로바야고 제베 이네스거라 근데 시단 매제에 대님부 방바인베시로 일라 방바 그 semba kibu kanga yakbu thongya chune ko kondu chig mardo de ta labden
so ila pamba so
ore pamba sini yido jebo gabu chele de ro chela pangbe namba cheso yewong ki chambo chela pangbe namba cheso do di yakbu yesa ko le chig chu ma jun sam yakbu che so ora yido nga sin de da yido nga
so here it says desire should be driven like a slave. Or attachment should be driven like a slave, because severity is its cure, and anger looked upon as a lord, because indulgence is its cure. Here, driven like a slave just means you're always keeping the person busy. This is talking about how is a teacher supposed to deal with a person who has a lot of attachment and craving. Then so they should just be given a lot of work so that they're constantly working and basically these, oh, that looks good or something never comes to mind because they're too busy working and so it helps them to reduce their attachment or craving and so the cure is then here is really just not letting them get distracted. I don't know the word here, severity, and so I can't come up with a better translation. But anyway, and anger looked upon as a lord, because indulgence is its cure, and so then the person who's very angry and so you have to just sort of be treat them very kindly and saying, oh, you're so wonderful and so forth, and in that way then they won't basically quarrel with you and storm out of the run away or storm away from the teacher. So here, if you look in the commentary, it says understanding the characteristics of desire and anger and how they function, a spiritual teacher engages in forming students, makes those who's engaged in forming students or cultivating students, makes those with this, I don't know what forming, anyway, forming students, makes those with desire work like slaves. This is because severity and this lack of deference is basically they're so busy then that they never have then this attractiveness never comes to their mind. So that's how it's curing their desire. It's curing their attachment and craving. Because duchak the shaitzarwa the control the control shagyu the bed
control the nyamdo doa choajen la choshin do tate 방식 림도 제베 셰다 메제베 대 님부 방바인 베치르스다 pombu나 신지제 콜베 개바 지 야부제 땡스도 저것도 pom불을 쓰거라 야부도 pom불에 베시라 개바 셰제 땡기로와 어디네 신지제도 가레스는 코베 나완 로봇제 가보 존에는 코 콘트사가 말와 어디에 야부도 대 야부도 산나 디만디 존에 코 남자 콘트사기로와 네 디라 님도 디 쇼로 카나는 된도 쇼 데데로 톨라 조신 따데스도 저것도 pom부도 쓰거라
The angry should be looked upon as lords, and by treating them with indulgence and serving them respectfully, their anger won't arise. You're just doing, you're praising them and keeping them very happy. Then they'll never see there's a problem. Which, if they saw there was some kind of problem, they'd immediately get angry. So this kind of indulgence helps to cure their anger.
Oh yeah, that better. Pena trigger bumbuselwe rimbashi no sigdo. Better. Oh, trigger sigdo. Tulo trunge dilsigwara.
Oh ne.
Jagato zene tromba so chinje tulo mangbo ene tulo ganga de pungu yora pungu agora pungu lia pungu yora konzo lokso de cher pungu kan be ya sa de Geshe ne ko chutu sa changbu da kawa chutaram bu kirwa jeza tulo to de sam yakbo je rojo po laga ku je to de mangbu ku je ene ko be de yakbo je rojo urwa yakbo du mu de kyoba shu kar je ne laga ku je ene ro khebe je me tulo to regri chidwa laga ya to ju ku res gora di Dagin Karsoran, the Sassan del Colega Kungo Korchu Grisiora, the Nashira. Nago Bungu de two left house on non left house on a Koya, Chados or Treasure, the Nichu does a treasure, Yabuche, Pubutanje, the Yabuchiwara. What is a coat of Jayabu Martin, Colega Kutu Marwa? What in the co to non less of the Colbe Shep Jishu, Betty, to Yabuchi, Chute, Chate, Pubutanchiora. Since I call Condrochendel, Tinashin Chegores, that trigger the Pumbudilia, Petato conditions, the Tinashin Chegores, they are created, which is the Yabuchegores.
There's a good example here of the washerman and his donkey. And if using the kind of using as an example of the way things were done in India at the time. Here, the washerman has to. Well, the custom is to go around to all the different houses in the area and get all their clothes and put it on the donkey's back, and then go down to the river to wash them. So you have to keep the donkey very focused on getting down to the river, and so he has to constantly be beating him and yanking him and doing all sorts of things to keep the donkey's from losing his attention and going off with the clothes. So then similarly the wise are keeping those who have a lot of attachment and to keep them busy working. So then when the washerman takes his donkey home, he treats him like a lord, because and gives him all sorts of good things, and so because he knows he has to, if the donkey feels, oh, that was awful, then he won't be able to get him up in the morning and go wash some more clothes. So then he gives him a lot of food and just keeps him very happy, treats him like a lord. So then that's how those habituated to anger have to be treated.
Oh yeah, this one.
Yes.
Tanga ngaba nyomo kewe tuji rimbasin di tama sabje ngayoba ngaba shegdwa. Nyomo kewe tuji rimbasin nyembo tembe chunese nyomo kewe tuji barchene nyembo tembe chades. 다 민접시나 고야 두주 가두고 콘도 사부차그래 가두고 특변도 샤르던데 네 착바다 던데 삼로 연구래 두주 대신바신 두줄 되게 진내시 도나체체 탑시체 오래서요 대간데레스나 되네 당보 띠무 양단 중세 당보 띠무디 연구래서라 건다니 쿠데 아니 야란서두자 야시다르 투레 잡지제 시다게 콘도당아 예시다게 요마 띠무도 쳔몽바르 쳔대겨라 그런지서 바로 초안 중에 바로 제대로 가다고 내가 마부치그라 내가 마부치 판도 순도제 단지만디지도 따고 콘도사에 뜻을내겨라 니마야 내가 지야다 칼레카야다 강가 용거라 어디도 sab소치 콘도 용거래셔라 신의 대자 중화대세 니라 좀 봤음도제 치수다 내가 강가 차서도 콜려려 지도자테는 거 칼라토스 세지디 삼로면다 코제는 건 신샤게 녀샤게의 투수 용거라 어디 인데 거 두숨들이 따고 그래서 거라 되게려 세모니무 배신 배겐셰체가 나주 당부 띠무 양다반 중라서 제 시다 삼르시다 마고랍세 되게라 바르도 처처에 동에게 콜로라션데 대금제 동에 바르도 달래가 망보치야다 대 카콤비야다 저거도야다 미다투네 계진다면데 셰 강가 용거라 네 동에 초아 중화는 주신 수에게 뒤에서 건다스고라 뒤에네 텔도 소다 테네 다리칼에 카야다 레가제 강가 메두사스고라 대장 중화데 류지 견제 제수 제베 녀모남 니라 림바숨도 중하고서 님의 두즈럽데 코티든 중에 내가 체체 연구를 해서 거라 대다 제수 템바 바유베 님부템바서 대다 템바 체체 안에 코티줄 따게 되게 체체고 안에 콘도마랑 제야다 어때서 내자다 텐데 메요 체야리아 탑시 안에 현다야 레가라 셰야다 가르치네 탑시 제고랬어도
So the antidote should be applied with an understanding of when disturbing emotions arise, or the afflictions arise. They arise at certain times during the day. So then you should then be aware of them and apply the antidote. So first there is confusion. When you get up in the morning, you can't. It's just you don't really get very angry or attached that time. It's just sort of like you're kind of muddled, and then in the middle there's anger. In the middle of the day when you're doing all your work and talking to a lot of people and so forth, then anger and hostility arise at that time. And later in the day, there's desire in these three stages during the day. So when you get home and all of the work is done and you're relaxing and taking it easy, then the mind sort of turns to wanting this and wanting that and craving this and craving that. So then that's when craving or desire arises. So at night, the commentary says, at night sleep and lethargy increase, and because phlegm predominates, makes you phlegmatic. You can think of it that way. Then, first in the morning, there is confusion or ignorance, and then in the middle of the day, one rides on the wheel of suffering caused by the frustrations of making a living. So you have all sorts of difficulties come up, and and you have to talk well with people, and sometimes that doesn't go well, and then anger arises because one is plagued by hunger and thirst. You have different not getting what you want during the day, so then that anger comes, or hostility comes to the surface. Then later in the evening, when one is recovered from exhaustion and so forth, desire arises, like previously said about, your mind turns to craving certain things. Thus, associated with different forms of physical weakness, the disturbing emotions arise in 3 successive stages during the day, and one must apply their antidotes accordingly with care. Well,
뭐야, 다 빼드려다. 빼나 게보, 제다게 점슬라 슈베, 시다게 바단 주마르게 붐바, 침베 되샤게 바신노스기도. 데 게보치게 점스 게보치려 제다리세텔이야. 에네코 저 메다 자탐바 슈비브레. 좋아. 되네 저 메다 자탐바 슈데코 되네 콘도사게라 텐데 망보치 카린다 메다 강가티니 삼 콘도게 준도야라. 에체마 다다도시 야보 총소세제 놈 텐데 루산 주마르 뿜바 자갈 텐데 로세세라 놈라 루제 소보추예다 텐데 텐데 자탐바 테레 에네코 가다죠 다티 야보 셔충선 신자디야 신자 차바디야 놈다 테줄 차바디 펜도야레 세라 어디나시레 세라.
So it's the example is of King Jantaka, who asked a Brahmin questions. Apparently he had like 100 questions for this Brahmin. Then the Brahmin felt hostile. He said, "Oh, why is this guy asking me so many questions?" And he was just like got very irritated by it. But 100 questions, so he was just a little like, this is too much. But then he was given 100 pots of oil after this. So then he goes, "Oh, this is great!" And so his craving and attachment was aroused. So it's a custom to give oil, and then the oil is used for cleaning, what do you say, bathing and so forth.
다 독숨진님 뭐 소소스 셰도아 소소 셰발라 숨스도 대샤 봉주 셰당 봉주 아니 티무 봉주 숨 소소스 셰도아.
So now we're on the individual explanation, the second part here, of the means to eliminate the afflictions. And so we're treating each of them individually, eliminating desire or craving and eliminating hatred or anger, and then eliminating confusion.
Yeah, that this way. Dabun desha punsu de la nindua, and desha panja rika bebe pamba. Desha de panja re some dikyo mare some ga sosoria yabu chenge repshida soso chenge yidonga re tongi yordo. Sako panja de dikyo mindu samje. Pangja imbate te kyonjen resha meb sogu samjandi shinya khakbu resi gyora. Doja pangja rikawe bebe pangbada odi bezu jeje yabu che kyondi yabu hakwa che pangbu resi gyora. Gyujingi kebar shebar chane pangba wase keche ki gyuda kyen kari yungu doshe te kuna pangba chagu resi. Donzen ni resi dwa. Da tangbu doja pangja rikawe pangba nese. Doja de pangja she kaya kare. Kondo ene kyon chigi sam soso le kyon je mele kyon chigi sam hako le labdo watos. Zan docha de ene kandre je kyon imba hako khabo desana. Docha ne zashi ge sobdo gyurne jigden luwar cheba de rikawe kube pangbar chawo se. Docha de endene soso le akar sore zashi ge chujin zao da roba chenge che. O de ran te kuda ran se soso le roba chenge. Zao chobo ge churib cheje yongyo re sera. Chesan dikyo re sha samgyo di gugudu samgyo ngara zure ra mesna o de re ta da re te ko samsa tengdo. Te kyo ge churkum do ti yonden samgyo. Ko sabso chen ma do di ponka bo re sgyo ra. O de chanen zashi ge sobdo gyurbe jigde luar cheba de gogo tang ge re sgyo ra. Zao imbe ku je tendal gogo tane tungye nyongjo ge re sgyo ra. Rika ge kube pangbar cha de se. Nen docha zamin zandrawas. Docha de ngone tanen zao mare phen togyo mare neba ke dunge magyo ine zawe chule ko neba ke ge re sera. De kyola minjik de se. De nen kyo chigdo samsa tende namsa ha ko tugyo mara. Me phen zao kebar do kibu chebar kasre kibu pangzar chamenza 팬토면 자오 임베 쿠이체마도 팬게 토면 내가 제기나 직대래 고대 내가 그 쪽부 힌동도 좀 쪽부 등을 고메 시그라 고 팬토요 말와 내가 제기요라 팬토 윤동도 셈마도 어디인데 타르 동에 집에 되샤 타도려 동에 지요래셔라 되샤 자오 메야 팬바다르 나웨스 팬바 중계긴 자오 임베 소럽시 나웨 자오 자와테는 되샤 데라 큐 뮤직 데스 큐테는 되샤 데라 치 뮤직 데 지고 그래서도 데나 미팬벤 자오 케바르도 기비 베베 빵버자와 미남데 빵버자와 임바시노스 소소 팬도 맹겐 자오데네 파미 육샤 주라바세 어디나 시제 되샤데 빵고 그래서도
So here, when we're talking about eliminating desire, there are two parts. The first part here is attachment, craving, desire, being hard to recognize as something to discard. There's exertion is required to abandon it. This is the as it says in the commentary here, desire masquerading as a friend deceives ordinary people. So then we always need things. We always feel we need to get this and need to get that. And so then when we're out of our a craving or attachment or acquisitiveness, then we feel, well, what's wrong? It doesn't appear as anything wrong. It's helping us to get what we need. So then, or get what we want, and so then it's hard to distinguish that it's a problem. So then you have to make a kind of special effort to understand that it's a problem. So here in the verse it says, desire or craving is no friend, but seems like one, which is why you do not fear it. But shouldn't people particularly rid themselves of a harmful friend? So the commentary then goes into this. Since desire is hard to recognize, you must pay special attention to getting rid of it. Ultimately, it produces suffering, so it is not a friend. It just, but looks like one, because it seems so benevolent. It's providing you with what you want, and so then why would you want to get rid of it? And therefore you do not fear it. Shouldn't people make a particular effort to rid themselves of a harmful friend? And so because similarly one should get rid of attachment or craving. Here, probably, I don't know, desire or wanting, and there's different words that we have that maybe show that it's something that is providing what we need. So then it's hard to see exactly. But once we understand the harmfulness of attachment, and then we can understand that it's something to just like a harmful friend. Wouldn't you want to get rid of wouldn't you want to avoid a harmful friend, or separate yourself from a harmful friend? Well,
oh yeah, tapederwa pena gebo kyasingi transong rida mola logbar shubala danembete meba borwe pemeda tenji charmata shiwa shinosigdwa ade ya tumrejidwa de gebo kyasin sede ko shingna singlia rida de taga cheje da cheje ruyu sara jamjam ruyara ene ko transong ji rilgolia te denge transong chige ene ko rida modin delia tegbocheba tongi bro ate ko da gyapche tikya da gyaimbere da gyapde transong de ne kondo saje transong de jagali ne mumu kyasida mebasigdo o ko dugja yong sho chije selam na ko ya tunrepche mangbu jaya do kya mangbu yongdo o ko dugja de ko de de ne ko tegbochi de za ko shiwa sho smalam kyaimbero gyapju za te ko gyabde chema ko yang chue de che Geshe di sha je ko yang zhuba nyam li che yang zhuo yin bra chue jen zhu de paru ji ko na wa de sha je ko rang ge zhe de ya la de zhe ni yong che la dan zhuo ji ba tong ge yo de我知道我那这么的被移动啊，一般他都是个国里啊，这些用个多啊，搞不起个多啊，甚至人家可的这么年多这些不啦？这么里啊，这不学不干了，那习惯饮食个的，我这个木长的长松都呀。
So the example here is of King Pandu. When he was out hunting, he heard a rishi. I mean, maybe we're using the word sage a different. Rishi is just somebody staying in the an ascetic or like a hermit in the woods, and who had turned himself into a deer copulating with a doe. So he shot an arrow and it hit the rishi, who cursed him. In India, this is a kind of common thing to say curses on people. So and they have certain effects. So when you have the curse was when you have sexual intercourse, you will die. And so then the king, took this to heart, and he said, wishing to practice sexual continence, the king gave up his kingdom and went into the forest. Then one day he saw one of his queens, or his queen, standing naked facing the sun, and he thought, oh, my queen is so beautiful. It's like the gods have brought her to me. And so out of his desire he had intercourse with her and died. There you go.
This one.
So don't get cursed.
That's
what I can do. I said it, he didn't say it.
Oh yeah, did it was on Taniba Jujinji Kebar Shebar Jene, Pangbar Shawan Sigdo. Tako Judah can't Carlet and Yungudo said, did the Hako Shash and the Pango Sigdo, the China Condin Carva. Oh, that area, the child Julia K. Jurshin Sigdo. Kanga Julia tend to kill your race, Sierra. Can't let Janet Jawade, Jawangama Combe Pasaka, Jul Mambo Yone. Shenja Shambu Yobe Kechi your Resgora. Yanko Negab Kenji Wangi, Ken of the Keve youth in the ten Kechi your Resgora. Kenle Jani Jawades. And the Sha Kenle Jawaka, Tene Trubla Chishime, Kenle Jawadeco, Chimixe, the Sha Europe, Tombina, Tidi Yushana, Tidi Mesal Shinshana Yayana, to the Kagandoshanako, Mabisha Resgora, Tilela Resgora. Then it trouble us, it may so lag race agora. Chichu means a shada be combe wangi, Sirangaman combe wangi, ne Shukshambu Yane, they pong in the Lela Marapong cover race agora. Oh, they did that, the Debadilla Carson. The child gave a cubby watch out, and the child Teleaco to zero Chini or Resgora. And the child Rixi Carriers and the Shani, Nile Kedese, the Jacajini, Yaya Combe. Returning to let Jawar Joshes. The Jacasha de Jawangama Combe Shuk Chimbo Yabati Wangiko, she shows you Resgora. Akajan Luburgi, you Chagbe, you can the Tebe Wangian Resgora. Luburdu, you never can let Jawade. The Dalan, the Shakele Jawakan, but any Nembe Trubla, the Kele Javate, Luburgi Kajuni Jawade, can the Panshana, can the Masal and Roshana, and can the Matavishevene, never do Tesla Resgora. You pang be pong the vessel, you the Papanshana, and you must kick my Resgora. Chishune did that mind the Toma Member Combashe Wangi, Javade to the Pankala Kagresgora. Nembo Top Chamber Pango vessel, Nembo Shuk Chambutane, Pango Resgora.
So, So we're on this second part of how to abandon desire or craving, and having understood the differences regarding causes and conditions, it should be abandoned or eliminated. Here, the verse says that desire arises from causes and also arises through circumstance. So desire arising through circumstance is easier to deal with, not the other. Desire arising from causes just means from causes in the past that are, it's a kind of more, what do you say, instinctual, and so then, and then also, but it also arises from causes, just something from through circumstance, which means just things that are happening right there that or immediate, some kind of immediate causes or conditions, maybe you can say. So the commentary says, never give desire or craving a chance to arise. It arises in two ways. Some forms of desire arise from a cause of a similar type created by repeated familiarity in the past. So it's talking about past lives, really, and where you've created some kind of a strong habit, and therefore and therefore have some strong feeling of craving in this life. So some arise adventitiously through circumstance provided by the proximity of an object. When what you're craving is nearby, then you know it just sort of suddenly arises there, and you have a craving. Of these two, desire caused by circumstance is easier to counteract. One can get rid of it by simply getting rid of the object, and take that away. then the other is not like that, since a strong antidote is needed to get rid of it. So you need a strong method to get rid of the more ingrained, we could call it a more ingrained habit or something. That's bringing about this craving. Well,
shokpa chik mena pirtuku marwa sigora. Zako chakbe yudi mena, teda trewa che kaka dipang shagi na, ko chik marwa sigora, lela re sigora. Dabcha shokpa chik mena, sigo shik mena, purmeni bashin drawa re se. Da pangkao de kare se na, thongma meba da gomba she chewa di re sigora. Pena purungin do shashin no sigora. Purung di chayna na do sha che re chi rik sigora. Manzu di siba kolo chi do zan, docha sunje tele chade purun di yongdo.
Well, so then the example here is of two kinds of birds, or two bird examples here. The one for the circumstantial arising of craving is a bird who cannot fly without one of its wings. So just that's easy to eliminate, because it's just like a bird who didn't have one wing, then they couldn't fly. So then, but the kind that is difficult to discard is like a pigeon's instinctive desire. And this is the one that's difficult, is really talking about many lifetimes of habituation, so that it's so it's instinctual, just like a pigeon's instinctual desire. And a pigeon is usually thought of as being very desirous or attached, or I think desirous works here. And then and for that reason, then when you look at the wheel of life or wheel of existence, then it usually in the middle usually. It's not always true. That a pigeon is what is used to symbolize desire, attachment, craving. Badrisa.
Yeah. 당연히 되리다. 니바 shetan bunzurida. 단 되샤 bunzu she사서. 다 shetan bunzu된 거다. 니바 shetan bunzu네세. 초안에 되샤래 니바 체베 베베 방바샤 돼서 공도된 되샤래 백견 망부 견 망아 연구를 거라. 근데 그 배수 전부 제제된 공도대 방에 탑시 제고를 해서 거다. 초아 댄신 니바네 미긴 예신 제바데 초아데 아니 고 가서래 콘둔진 발라서 같은데 템퍼처를 해서 거라. 초였더니 양내 양도 삼로다. 봐. 댄시 초아 댄신 니바르네 해서 거다. 미긴 예신 제바도 그 미기에 되네 주 망부 제제 된 망부랑 생기가 이렇게 망부 있게 그래서 거라. 미긴 예신 제바데. 대단 남고 예셰베 녀모 남다르 제바요. 데 콘도되게 규다 겐다 예와다 되게 좀 가르가르 용기 여바다 레행바 가르사네 데부 가르 용기 뜻 강가 야부 셴베셰셰 에네 봉야게 탑시 녀모 콘도데베 랍도파 데 반데 타르와 체고 그래서 그도와 콘도네스 제바 냠돌로샤나 초안에 군진 댄신세 군진스도 삼로잉에마치 마디버디 양내양도 삼로 따야돼 콘스거라 양 그든데 제서 양내양도 삼로 군진스기도 군진 댄시 담돈 진베세 숙첨보 진베 네바네 랑게 주색바다 댄시 네바네 미케스 소소게 주데 네바도 콘트세네 매버소데스거라 주 시디 매버소도 근데 시알라 네바케베 타치도 미기신세 아니 샹달레 konnebakeere sosole nebache mikibso 샹le nebakeeres 샹le nebakebe 타치도 미기시 타치도 네 미기와레스 거라 그러니까 미기신 참매 소 네바 첨부 제바데서 참매벨레라 소베 엔들레 마무사그레 파세발라 소바 마세발라 소바 다든데 용도와 콘트사두자 참매질레라 소바 든데 사그레소라 레드산이 기와시망에 봐도 냐와리 견종게들 삼매질레서도 그다음 남바 건도 녀모 남게 견제 야와당 콘드스거라 니미다 시다 뽕에 탑셰베 셰버제네 아니 녀모나 남바르 타르바 셰버는 기로 소소 녀보셰네 빵바르자오스 어디들 난다
So here we have the an individual explanation about how to abandon hatred. It says here anger is perhaps also seems to be a good translation in the commentary and the verse. So anger is a fault more grave than desire or craving. And therefore, one should strive to get rid of it. It's more grave because it brings about a lot more harm and difficulty, and so then anger is a much more grave fault. Anger is, as the verse says, anger is lasting and certainly makes one do grave non-virtue. Gets you into a lot of great misdeeds. So thus constant awareness of their distinctions will bring an end to will bring an end to afflictions. Here it's talking about just the certain knowing about the causes and the disadvantages and so forth will help you to overcome anger. So if we read the commentary, it says, since anger, which is made to last and held fast by resentment, certainly burns one's own and others' mind streams and cause others harm, it is totally non-virtuous. It is just so. Since anger, which is made to last and held fast by resentment. Resentment here just means when somebody harms you, then you constantly bring it to mind. You're thinking about it all the time, and it gets more, and it increases it. And resentment has that kind of quality of just not being able to let it go. And so then in that context, then certainly burns one's own mind stream. That means that it totally destroys any kind of sense of mental peace that you have, and then it also will destroy others' mind streams. It means when and disturb their peace when you get angry at them and causes harm. So then, because of all this harm that it's bringing about, then it is totally non-virtuous, just completely non-virtuous is what it's saying. And then it makes one do serious misdeeds such as the 5 heinous crimes. These are like killing your parents and so forth. That's what causes one to its anger, and so then they're called heinous crimes here. What it means is that you go straight to a miserable realm as a result of them. So through constant awareness of their faults, disadvantages, causes, and the means to eliminate them, disturbing emotions or afflictions will be brought to an end. So then you have to understand, in order to overcome anger, being very difficult to overcome, you have to understand its faults, its disadvantages, the causes that bring it about, and the means to eliminate it, the antidotes and so forth. So that's once their specific antidotes are known, one must get rid of them.
Pena Chuse Condre Gaba Kuju, Saji Tendurication, Tembe Tembala, Trajumba Tobashinos Lua. But Chuse Condre Chuse Tangsonji, Sarva Tangson. Or Tangson to the Gama, Dende Yungudo, Tratu the Bear, Rumbuche Massage, Rumbuche Dende Yungudoa, Tratu the Sage Rumbuche. Or Deco, Tawaji Naja de Onete Gira. And it charging Buson Cascal Jumbuyo and Gira. And it Sanje Carre that's Sanje Chitinepa Peve in Burwa. And the Pedus and Court Tadil to Tosin time, but Tosin Sinagura, Convent de Siete. Sanje Marmize, Sanje Marmize, Papa, the court charging Buson that way it was Convent to him, Burwa. Or to the Teco Carre de Tondunation. Tangoliazzi, combattia machine slaria. Tundu Nashi Slava. Tell it any cab among Boko Tundu Lambaresigara. Tene Sanje Jumden de Tembecaliaco, Tuzin Rabjilia, Tritil Udici, Sanje Sandy Tuberesgora. Sandy Turn and Nicoda, Lerici Tichene, and Atandai, Tundu Litayu, Tanga Tandas, Nico Shiberesgara. Tuzin the Tabcheco Shiberes. She named Milikiane. Sanje Tembalia, soon as Sanje Chusoni, and a Tachumba Tobares. Oh, did it?
Kojena the Sange Damba, the Sange Num, because Sake Shake Muni Gingamma dipping Makara de Dende Be.
Sanjay Yusun Sigara.
Also, no,
Marmeze, Sanjay Tanding a Calapso.
Oh, Marmeze the Bay.
Oh, did it?
Sange Marmeze.
Oh, dear.
So the example then is.
Nothing in Marva, Sanjay Sanjay.
So of the previous, it was during the time of the previous Buddha, Dipamkara, when he. Apparently, bodhisattvas have very long hair, and so then he placed his feet on the bodhisattva's Sumati's hair while making a prediction to him. Then this Dharma Ruchi was incensed and performed a verbal misdeed by saying, he's like an animal standing on the hair with both feet. And so he was reborn as an animal 91 times because of this karma of having said that. And so one time as a fish, he wrecked a boat. I guess he was a rather large fish, and heard the super mundane Victor Shakyamuni's name. He heard the Buddha's name, and he thought, why should I continue comfortably in an animal's rebirth? And then died on the spot. He was he took rebirth as a human being and became ordained in the Buddha Shakyamuni's spiritual tradition, and so then through aversion to cyclic existence while walking outside his door, he actualized the state of an arhat, a foe destroyer.
Messina Timugi Seni Chita Bushinas, or the Chatan Conduta Tezukorte and the Shesas or Aquare. Timudi, more countries, Yawa country, Senas Yora. And the Tambo, Nyomoji Sawa Nursum Gudreta, Nyomu Sawa, the Timudi Resungudua.
So here we're going on to the third section here of the individual explanation. This is how to eliminate confusion or ignorance, and so recognizing the root of the disturbing emotions, the afflictions. Confusion or ignorance is the root of all the afflictions. So the different characteristics of desire and anger have been described, hostility and attachment. And what are the various characteristics of confusion?
Oh yeah. That is how they are. Lula Luanchi Shindu Timukula Nejur Desidwa. Manzu Luigi Wambosu Chizune Kandipa to Chazali Orava. Luansigra. Oh, Delia and she and Miki Ombona Ombone Chi Ombutus Negdoa. Oh, dinner she saw Luigi Wambotelia and then Luigi Wambotelia Shanda. Miki Ombona Ombone Ombuchi Ombos of Negre Esira. Lula Luan Chishindus. Timukula Nejur Dese. Timu Meshibe Mombate, Numo Samagi, and a hint of the Resigora. Kondo da Najeda, Kangakevina, or Tado the Karikevina. Timu de Shichiguara. When a Kondo of China, you Rangune, you don't want to or any go chashin Chigara. Kondo of China, Rangune, you do me or as you told you. So say, my English part, Shaba. So some of the time I get you on the some women do. Koran, you don't want you Koran when it's to you as to Giora. When it's you Koran when you don't want Yona, Michi, you don't want on the Kange, you don't want Tongora. Get Tongia Marwa. Echo Capchili, you don't want on the Capchilia, Cochita Madina, you do know about Condors and the Traje to Jatungua. So some get Tanachi, Chaban Dudo Mato, you can young when they are Marwa. So Naranzo Tadu say you don't want to you Koran when you don't want to kiss your telepassion just check over it. No Shagiora. You Koran and I should just show something. When you got in a social summertime just search and upon Zingiora. You don't want to say that. You don't know I said down open Condors and you don't want those to make Anga go you don't know Tongora. Tongomara Kasha pay Abotongura. Kasha you don't know Tongora. So using Werne. 이동호에 남바테 이동호에 남바테베나 그 집으로 강가 집에 통고라 통고요 말아 소소 샘게 따단 개반도도 자꾸 유잉원에 여바다 예도 와다 예도 왔다 되게 아니 콘도당아 제기가 와라 파치 그 베네스 매버지 소소 바다나 지레샤선 베게 매나 콘도당아 제기가 말아 잡기 말아 어디 되고 가서래 디 티모기 시체네 콘도당아게 강게 깨고래서 티기도 쓰기도 어디 질랍다 알다 한번 말들
so that so in the verse here it says as the tactile sense pervades the body, confusion is present in all of them. By overcoming confusion, one will also overcome all disturbing emotions. So all of them here means all of the, whether it's desire or anger or hostility and attachment, all of them are pervaded by ignorance. Ignorance pervaded here means that ignorance is at the base of them, and how that is so is that when we see something that's attractive, and also mentioned unattractive at first, attractive, then desire occurs. We feel that the object itself, this feeling of attractiveness is an attractiveness from the side of the object. We have this feeling that somehow the attractiveness exists from its own side, that it's the object that's actually attractive. But if that were so, then everybody would feel attraction to that same object, and it's not true that everybody does. Some people feel it's unattractive and will get angry, and so, but we're attributing. So it's clear that somehow this is created from our own side, that we're somehow attributing attractiveness from within ourselves, and so this is coming about from this confusion where we're seeing things as existing from their own side. So then when they appear to us as existing from their own side, or perceiving different ways of expressing that, and so then when we generate anger, it's the same problem, that we see that the unattractiveness exists from the side of the object. That the object itself has some kind of unattractiveness inherent to it, but if that were so, again, then everybody should feel anger at seeing this unattractiveness, quality of whatever object that's causing us anger. So then it's the same process, that it's something coming from our own side, our own ignorance or confusion that is creating this, that is seeing these qualities as existing somehow from their own side. Oh, tutsu yang de ngatse de
oh yeah, that go on the shasha
Deshana.
Come.
Oh, come on. Well, how many minutes we got for the question?
4:24.
4:24. Oh, that's a. We got to kama truk la drilen la kama truk yo.
Kama truk do we.
La.
More ane desanyi lo yeshana.
La. So then we'll continue with tomorrow on this verse 135.
More.
That's Driva Shidu.
Oh, yeah.
Some Shidu. No, Shidu.
Oh.
So the first question is, dear Geshe, since bodhisattvas can transform harm toward them into wisdom and compassion, moving them along the 5 paths, what is the karmic effect of one who harms them, since it seems like a cooperative cause of more wisdom and compassion? Is it both positive and negative? Okay. The Jangchu Samba de Vichik Nuba Jena, didn't mi de la Sherab ke yore, then Ningje ke yore, de kongi nuba de kaza Jangchu Samba rang la pendobo chi gyur tugi yore, then it mi nuba jakan la le garid sagi yore, chi chena de kongi Jawa la dene ko the Jangchu Samba la pendog jegyo de ko pempa chi yongyo de wa then chi chena de kongi kongi de nube jaken ki legi drebo chi chena tam yabo yongyo de dende de be legi drebo
Sambo yongi de best.
Sambo dang yamba nika nyamdu yongi de be kari yongi de ko de kaza pampa sort of cheek Jangchu Samba la jeba yinza nuba dan pampa de.
Oh, Jangchu Samba la nuba kerina ko Jangchu Samba korona pento yora.
Right.
Bene soba konge chene ro.
Right.
Jangchu Samba soba konge yora.
Right.
Nganje choji pande adisha pele pedu koranyamdo ene achare chi pete shiga ngemba tuja shibichi yosegdo. Ane ko tabare chi dameda she de kondu tungiri chosara mizutade. Ane de shanda zuwa da keranyamdo di achara ko masha na yabu dose. Pati kondu tungi yabu medu ko shirwa. O di nga ko nga penshi da to yose. Ko nga soba ke tenyi soba ko nga le pen to yose. Ko yabu yin sha ko yose ngwa. Yole di chilabta.
There's an example that illustrates this. When Atisha was in Tibet, he had a servant who had such had a very irritating way of being, and everybody just immediately sort of got irritated by this guy. So that somebody came up to the Atisha and said, "Why are you keeping this guy around? And can't we just dismiss him?" And so then Atisha said, "Oh no, it's not like that. I have to keep him with me. He's very helpful to me."
Oh yeah. Uti indiko da karsura. Pajo de neba chena ko suja de seba komeda. Pengi ora. Seba komeda o da pete. Na seba komeda tusu renson samje. Seba komeda pendo yora. Kondu tunge majuna seba komeda ke yomara. Garanzo ne kondu meduza o seba kondu ya umare sigre. Kondu tunge jingosono kondu sa. Seba yomara kasnga lapsarimba. Ko Jangchu Samba ngone nyamli singa seba kondu tunge les no da direnga seba komeda tusu les no samje. Seba komgi yora ka komgi yora.
So this is illustrating, bodhisattvas have this practice of course, of patience. basically Atisha is saying is taking great delight in the opportunity to cultivate his compassion. He's saying that his reply was, "Oh, I'm not going to get rid of him. He's so helpful to me. I can cultivate my patience." And so so then it's not like us, like we were talking about the other day. A bodhisattva views the opportunity to, when something is very irritating is happening, they're delighted. Oh, now I can be patient and tolerant. And whereas we're kind of the opposite, we kind of feel, oh, I'm a very patient person, and somebody does something to irritate us, and we get immediately angry. You know? So then, so it's very different.
Oh yeah, Simje Kondu Trunge Yu, Chimbal Longen, Jobo Yu, Robert Chero Senge Yu, and it is the Chamba Comia Yori, Seba Comia Yori, Ninji Comia Yora. The Simjan Latene, and Azu Sange, Taroto Kanga Chebudwa. And the Indico Dana Simja Tamjelation Nobile Lagbese, Donjo Drube Sambe Chotu Chebans and Basho Soda. And when there's some Ladanshnet and they said, no. Kondu Trunge Yori, Kanga Yoba Yori. Katange Yori, the other server come teaches the Chiso, the Nyamdon Jade, the Sosu Nerim, the Yari, Doni, and Dokora. The Duco Pento Yora. So it's really sentient beings can, when you see somebody who has a lot of suffering, then you can cultivate compassion, and who has a lot of it's very harmful, you can cultivate patience, and all of these good qualities then are cultivated in relationship to other sentient beings. So really the verse that says Dani Samchen Tamse La Yeshe Normal Dagni Samchen Tamse, I will cherish all. May I cherish all beings. You should know this, because I don't have to do it exactly, because it's all living beings who allow me to practice, to cultivate the spirit of the altruistic spirit of enlightenment, which is like a wish-fulfilling jewel. No, that goes. Never can get in under just some pan don't get in under Kanga, pan don't get the Koya. Never can get to the Malam Capshaw, Tandako, near Tandam, Maoba, the Coconto Jombasho, Namokanga, and Jom Tobasho, Kolia Church and Simbachi shows Malam Javiora. The Kokala never say Tente was a door. Chanjusambal never shabby in Ayako, never shabby take it in Devu Maria, Chanjusambati Malam Guangalas and Nicola, Davan Del Yungura, Tedan Del Netava Yungura. Never shabby take it, call Tawajuan the Mara. To that Depa Yungura. Kupaju the Chanjusamba Saba Comrocha, some Koshe to Kondumasa and Kondasaga Kushabina. Logarva. Condumana, I said, never going to kill Yora. Never going to kill the color the Digba Yungura. In the changes and battle, Panto de Comalam Jet and then the color Yungura.
So you have to distinguish, though, between the two players in this interaction between the person who's harming the bodhisattva and the bodhisattva's reaction to that. The bodhisattva, of course, if somebody helps the bodhisattva, then the bodhisattva returns, will be helpful in return. But even if somebody harms a bodhisattva, they're helpful in return. But what the bodhisattva is doing is reacting to that and saying, oh, may I be able to help this person in the future to overcome his or her anger and affliction, so that I can lead them to Buddhahood and to eliminate all their suffering. The Bodhisattva has this strong wish and compassion in response to this harm, And so as a result of that, the bodhisattva only goes from happiness to happiness. But the person, I mean, it's one thing if the person's thinking, well, I'm going to help this bodhisattva. This bodhisattva really needs me to, do some harm, and so then, that's one thing. But they're not thinking like that. They're thinking, I'm going to get this bodhisattva, and so then, as a result of that, they just are creating, a misdeed, and they get bad, basically non-virtuous karma. That then, as a result of that, they have some forms of suffering.
Didn't do it in this one.
No. Is it this tendency to see things as one partless whole that led to the great exposition school's assertions of the two truths? What I did, Jalakanga pictured Chameba Tongyo de Chameba de Gena de Darang Shoge de Topa Gyugen ki Topa la Dene Ngate Pa Kaza Mingdan Topa Dagyo de Yinian de that's a picture Chameba sort of chik Tongyo de Jalak Kaza Jogse dan Kangba de Chameba Tongne de Jugujusa Yore Samgyo de Chameba Nangwa de La Dene Chedramawa de Consa de Chame do Dutren Chameba Yore de la Dene Yongba de Bay de Consa Dawala Chameba do Chameba Chi Yore that's a de Nangangi Dende Yongi Yudzan Dene Consa Dawala Dende Yongi de Gay.
Chiramaoke Chamise did it, Maratanda Chamambo shall ten Nepatagi ora. Chatina and Ditiris, Miris, Kangbaris, Yomarwa. Chachi, Rene Pumbe Kada Shabda Toa, the Chidana, to Rene Pumba Reo Marwa. Chatus Rene Reo Marwa. In a charlatan Pandi Pumbas Patagi ora. What do you do not call Chamesig Marwa? Kokora Garsora Rangune, Pumba Yin, Pumba Yimbachi Korangune, Yujimune, Pumba Yimbachi, Zugu Sergi Evesuris Tungutua. Sako Rangune Yavasera. Chamangula Turgin, and the Lur Tasha, Niga Kukua, Chache, Chache Latene, and the Palu Tagora, Niga Kukiora. Sako Chache Latene Palu Tagbatele, Tagbare deora. Inako. Chameba re some tender zigi marwa, Rangwin to Mazingede. Chache re de Kokora Marangi Zingiora. Penadar Vicinaco Sudan, Semdan, Sorodan, Dushi de Kanga, Liturgian Delgiora. In a Nangaranga some Gidua. Did the Rangwin Yusera. Nangaranga use a Shanda Liturgian Delni Yoba Rede Yorva. Shanda Mabu Maingage Liturgian and the Lord Sutani. Tico Yora, Yima and Namshashahora. Yinako didn't remember the Rangwin, a Korangi Yuvesunice. Nangarangi Yusarici. Or didn't you call Rangwin to Basora? Chameba Sigiomara. Chameba Sidico Rabat and Dura. Rabat, Chameba, Chameba Sidi, Rabat and Dura. Tanda Chamambo Yore, Teletene Lupa, Tanico Yore Sigara. Ko Chami Yimaka Yomara.
It's really when we're talking about what kind of an error is happening when with ignorance, it's things. It's not like we don't know that things have I mean, it's a very rough understanding to think of things as somehow being a partless whole. What we know that they have all these different parts, but for things to what the mistake is that really the thing appears to us to exist from its own side. It says that I exist. It's sort of like when you think about the self, I'm here, I exist here. It is presenting, is what presents what is being presented to us from within our, just by perceiving the five aggregates it's just this I am here, is what or I exist here, or this is me, or something like that. So it's not. It's not like we're sort of understanding somehow that the object exists from it, as some kind of a partless whole. And that's not the case.
Right. And
then so then if it did exist in that way, then if it did exist in the way that it presents itself as existing from its own side, then it would in fact have to exist, as a partless whole.
Di yung marasi gora. Tine kado menge yibi menge tuchi shagore. Kado de yibi yone chameban dosa yo marasi gora. Zachina ma chiruyugi se. Chiruyugi tu yosi gora. Shebal san tu mo goche. Ene semzambo chiruyugi tu yone shebal chana tu chaje ma do chaya yo mare. Kado dan sobda yobe chi tuchi chagora. Chaje ma do lol chaya yo mara. Chiruyugi tu yone kopsha chong Porujil kopshachi jaju menge chachi menge tuji yoko gravasana odi yoko gudus gyora. Chidama oda shenda umatengyo to ti yomarwa. Tiko chiruji yore ese. Yurangune yore ese. Yona se ne tinde tuji ne kopshajana kiran shebal takumare. Koranjanje kopshajana 참매비질 도지 누가 쓰려네 고 가고 시기라. 참매비지 요스네 뒤처럼 도지 용 말와. 뒤들이야 뒤신다 소소나 엔드네 차요 말외세. 아니 참매비네 고데 팀두라 디팀두라. 처럼 매비사두라. 어딘데 전나가 당겨라. 그 랑은에 여네 뒤참매세 되셔겨라.
So then really, the Vaibhashikas are not making this kind of they're not going through this kind of a process to come up with their understanding of things as being composed of these partless atoms or whatever you want, partless particles. The partless particles is something that they're just assuming. They're stating right from the beginning that there is an external existence that's separate from the mind, and everything is there, and so then it's brought about through it's these building blocks, which are partless particles, and so then they have this idea of external existence, and then so when the Chittamatra view and later the Prasangika view comes, or the Madhyamaka view comes along, then they're saying, well, how could things, how could there be things existing? How could there be these partless particles? How would you ever, they sort of undercut this whole idea of some kind of partless particles that form that can be the building blocks, and so that they said, well, if it's if there's no right and left and there's no front and back, and you tried to put them together, then how are you going to create anything? They just sort of would just dissolve into each other, and nothing would ever get formed. And so with these kinds of what do you say, assertions or what do you say, refutations, refutations, then they undercut the idea of the Great Exposition School. The Mamsakas contend that the Buddha's body is not the Buddha. How is this different from the Great Exposition School's assertion that the form aggregate of a Buddha is not a Buddha? The Buddha that is the object of refuge is asserted to be only the attribute of non-learning. Chirulpa Sagyorabe Derengi Mutekpa ki Dawachi She Son Dev Karisena Dev Sangeki Gudi Sangye Mare did Sangye did Chedramawa did Drabochi Yore did Kasa Sugipumbo Sangeki Sugipumbo Sangye Mares Chedramawa Kelengi Yore did the Buddha that is the object of Sangye Gunchok said because Milobe Ketra Re Keleng Yore Milobe Ketra then it did the countries they need Keba Yore the Karsa de Chiropa the Chiropa Sena de Kada Mutekpa then Chedrama would be Drabo do something.
Chedrama ge Sangye Kusu de Sangye Maritunge Tembaresi Yora. Oh, Gares in Chedrama Luchan Sangye de Kora Karsore Tamebe Ludi Shishache. Marazu Nation Nimasama gave a cup of Sobota Resigora. Did Dunga Tembarese Sangye Maresigora.
So then what they say is that because the Buddha attained enlightenment in his lifetime, then that the body of the Buddha is a what do you say, is a true suffering. Okay, so then it couldn't, because it's a true suffering, then this couldn't be, is not the Buddha, or and then they sangye mare so
tunge dem bare segora tambu sama jebe kapki sobota arba shada riba ngaranzu nashin tongiora chida maogi sangye koranga zu to nashin je kelingi ora le tepa chimbu chen ko tambu ne sangye de ko sangye ngene sangye sarba ngaranzu mi chu je tuba che pegi ora mado sangye sar sharu duje pumbure yo mare segora
so it's a very different assertion in the Mahayana schools of thought that they feel that there isn't in the Vaibhashika they feel that the Buddha came just like you and I, and it has this body of with blood, flesh, and bones, and so then but in the Mahayana viewpoint, the Buddha is emanating a form and coming into the world. It's not, and the form of the Buddha is not at all like our bodies, right?
No, tanda tegende chiriba said is sangye de kunji mare said mendo sigmado kunji mare segura chitangi minashi chigbare kanga chenge de mare sigdo
right kunji mare yani chik because Suku Korla Kusu.
Maimba Seswa.
Rane.
Oh, de ko Suku in Sanje de Sne Chiruba in Gimarwa Sagede. Sanje Suku Sanje Maris and ko Sanje Kelling Marwa. Yechidama the Chibangira. Oh, they do it.
Oh, it's probably, I don't know, maybe it's not really a...
Oh, those are the guy. Sanje Suku, Sanje Maimba de Vanechi, Chimetawash in the Dorch of Seswa. Oh, they did that. I didn't know what you said.
Yeah, no, although it was put together, I think the translator maybe caused confusion in this one because it was put together with a Mamamsaka contention. It's actually the idea of a Buddhist idea that there's no that the form aggregate of a Buddha is not the Buddha. So that's the assertion that is brought forth by the Vaibhashika. It's not the Mamamsaka. The Mamamsaka is really, I mean, because they don't even believe that there is such a thing as a Buddha. So then they wouldn't have this kind of assertion. So then they their real objection is, that nobody could ever become omniscient.
Sanje Kelling Marwachidane. So good as Sanje Marishan, that's Yevesun to Shagger in the Shag Marwa. Oh, didn't do it. That is George Lassanido.
That Chicta.
Did Saniniam do Cheshore.
Okay, we'll cover the fourth and last question tomorrow.
Do that.